Hello, I'm Brian Kirby, host of 502 Conversations. The following conversation was recorded at PsyCon 2019. PsyCon is the annual Committee for Skeptical Inquiry Conference, a 4-day event sponsored by the Center for Inquiry, where people from all over the world gather to attend workshops and talks given by scientists, critical thinkers, doctors, investigative journalists, philosophers, and others, all promoting reason and science and fighting against pseudoscience in all of its forms, including medical quackery, psychics, conspiracy theories, superstition, and magical thinking. Speakers have included Brian Greene, Julia Sweeney, Richard Dawkins, Stephen Fry, Paul Offit, Elizabeth Loftus, Kurt Anderson, Michael Mann, and many, many more. The Center for Inquiry encourages scientific inquiry, critical investigation, and the use of reason, and they publish Skeptical Inquirer, the magazine for science and reason. You can learn more at centerforinquiry.org. And now, a very interesting and informative conversation with actor and comedian Julia Sweeney. Welcome to 502 Conversations. I'm Brian Kirby. My guest today is comedian, writer, producer, actor, monologist, voracious reader, atheist, and newly elected Center for Inquiry Board of Director, Julia Sweeney. Welcome, and thank you very much for being here. I hope you're not too nervous to be meeting with me.
I'm so nervous.
I don't
know if I can talk.
I have quite a bio on you, so I'm going to read it because it's very interesting, I must say.
Oh, is it?
I thought so. Well, let's see. Some of Julia's TV credits include Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Fraiser, Family Guy, Mad About You, and of course, her multi-season stint as a cast member on Saturday Night Live. You have appeared in such films as Pulp Fiction, Vegas Vacation, and Stuart Little. Julia is also a playwright and has created several one-person shows, among them God Said Ha, and another Letting Go of God, which chronicles your journey from Catholicism to atheism. You are currently appearing in 3 series: Shrill on Hulu, Showtime's Work in Progress, and Starz' new series, American Gods. And your most recent one-woman show is Julia Sweeney, Older and Wider, with Julia Sweeney, I as well, in the works right now.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I hope so. Thank you so much for coming. So, congratulations on Center for Inquiry, but what does that mean? You're a newly elected board of directors.
I don't know. You know, what's so terrible is that, first of all, I'm such a big supporter of the organization. I love their mission. I want to further the culture's knowledge of inquiry and skepticism and everything that they're trying to promote. And I've been doing things for them for 20 years. So, I mean, it's, well, maybe not quite 20 years, but at least 15 years. So I'm really sold on the organization itself. Like, I really like it. And so I was asked if I would consider being on the board and was told the amount of time that it would take. And I agreed and was flattered. And then I got voted in. And right when I got voted in, I had a lot of other professional things happening, getting on American Gods in Toronto and the other shows I'm on. And so now these emails are flurrying back and forth between the board of directors, and I feel like I'm barely able to catch up with everything that's going on there.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm like, oh my God, I hope I have time to sit and read all these emails. But I will eventually.
I said in the bio you're a writer, actor, producer, and playwright.
Yes.
So do you consider yourself any one of those more than the other?
I guess actress, comedian, I would say, because, you know, I kind of exist, my art, in this gray area that's sort of stand-up comedy where, you know, stand-ups write their own material, so I guess you'd call them writers, but would you call them a writer or a performer? Well, they're a comedian. They're both of those things. But then I also do it in more of a play style, so I guess I'd say comedian is the one that most accurately describes me.
I think the reason I ask it that way is because I don't know if I read this on your blog or it was in part of God said ha that you like to spend a lot of time writing in the morning. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do. And I'm thinking all the time about the next show that I'm working on and what I want to say. So I guess in that sense, I'm always writing something. Yeah.
So
I guess I'd writer. But, it's funny because to me, right now you could say I'm being a writer because I'm composing what I'm going to say to you and then saying it. So to me, what I do so bleeds into each other. It's so amorphous. It's hard to even draw lines between what part of me is the writer and what part of me is the actor and what part of me is the comedian.
All righty. I'm going to start chronologically now and work backward because you're in some very interesting, well, I should say some very interesting things right now.
Yes.
First of all, you're on 3 series right now.
I know, which is...
How does that happen?
I don't know how that happened. I'm sure it will stop.
And there's no conflict? There's no shooting conflicts or anything?
No, because, American Gods, I'm in the most. And that has 10 episodes, and I'm in 8 of those episodes. And my character's in a lot. But like on Shrill, that was 8 episodes, and I was only in 4, and it didn't take that long to shoot those 4 episodes. I had to go back and forth to Portland, but, so that was easy. And then in Work in Progress, I'm also in 4 episodes out of 8, but I was able to do that. So yeah, there's no conflict, but I am a regular, semi-regular, I guess I should say. Well, I guess, yeah. But although, like, Work in Progress is a different story because I'm an executive producer on that and was with that from the very inception of that show. So, yeah, I don't know how it's worked out that way. It's blowing my mind. I keep saying to my husband, I'll never have a year like this again.
So it's Work in Progress. It hasn't, we're in October 2019 for anybody that's watching.
It's going to air, its premiere is December 8th.
So all 10 episodes are shot?
Yeah.
Wow.
Everything's done.
And then American Gods, you're starting to shoot in Toronto.
Yes, I've shot 1 episode, and I start another episode on Monday.
And Shrill is due up for season 2.
Yeah, and I finished Shrill, and I don't know when that's coming out. Somewhere between January and March on Hulu.
Now I want to talk about Shrill.
Okay.
Because I've seen all of season 1, and it's very interesting, and there's part of it I don't get. So, which is okay, I think, because you can explain it to me. And I kind of took some notes about it because I wanted to be very specific. So I did enjoy it, but it made me cringe at times. Specifically, your character, the mom, so loving and caring, but with these stabbing comments sometimes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And like who talks like that? So I guess my question is that some character? I mean, that was written into the show before you got to.
I didn't write that. Yeah, and I didn't write that. Yeah.
So, but who? Can I ask if you're drawing on any specific person for inspiration, and if so, who were they, and where did they live? Because
it's so funny because my own mother, who was really concerned about my weight my whole growing up, and is kind of an obsessive Weight Watcher person.
Oh, I did not know that.
Was so much worse than the character that I play. Like, I'm playing such a lighter version of what I grew up with in terms of...
Oh, and as you can see, I'm stunned in silence. Wow, no kidding.
Yeah, so like when people say Vera is the name of the character on Shrill, is so harsh, it's kind of hard for me to see that. I see what she's doing wrong. I mean, I can see... that her strategy isn't going to work and that she's making things worse by what she's doing. And the next season, I do it a lot more. Like, I really get worse. But to me, it's so much less bad than what I experienced. Like, it seems like she seems almost modern.
I guess that didn't come... the 2 one-woman shows I saw of yours via the internet, when you speak about your mom, I mean, she sounds very loving and caring.
She is loving. She is loving and caring.
But
people are many things.
Yeah. Nicely. So why?
And she is loving and caring. Actually, she feels that she's being loving and caring to talk about weight so much. I think in her mind, a woman who isn't thin probably isn't going to get a man or something. I mean, it's to her culture, her worldview. That's the worst thing that could ever happen to a woman.
Not to have a man.
Yeah, and the way you get a man is to be attractive. So. And to her, being attractive means to be thin, almost exclusively. I mean, and so growing up, there was a lot of hysteria around me and my weight and my sister and her weight. And, there's a lot of talk about it. It was just a constant source of conversation.
Yikes.
In a way that well, I actually, almost all the women that I know say that's the same way they grew up. I mean, that was not that uncommon for that time. And I think it might even still be true. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of pressure on girls to look a certain way.
Yeah, okay.
And
a lot of it comes from...
And a lot of your fortune, and like for my mom, she married at 21 and was always really a stay-at-home mom. Her career was to look good enough to get somebody to marry her, and she married my dad, a lovely guy. I'm not saying...
No, I get it.
But I'm just saying that in her mind, you could control how you looked completely, which I actually disagree with. And if you didn't look a certain way, you weren't going to get the certain advantages. And in that sense, I am sympathetic with her. I think, she had the lessons of her time, and she took into account the lessons that she only had so much to work with herself, with her own personality. Being pretty for her was a major asset. And so, anyway, it's so complicated, but I really connect to the show because, my whole life experienced those sort of quasi-underhanded comments all the time about dieting and how much people were eating and my next diet, and all that kind of diet culture talk is something that is so much more... was so much worse and more pervasive when I grew up than it is even on the show. So even though I think that Vera is harsh with 80 about her weight, even though I feel like she's actually does pretty good. I mean,
Well,
yeah.
Sending Weight Watchers gift certificates or care packages?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my mom did that.
Oh, come on.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to disparage your mom, so I'm not going to say.
No.
That just sounds...
Well,
so
no,
that's
if my mom were here, she would say yes, and I wish it had worked better.
So I guess it's actually, a comment on the times then, where I saw when the show started, and I am like I'm shrinking from some of the commentary.
Really?
Well, and also like the weird scene with A.D. Bryant and that super skinny yoga person comes out and says, "Oh, take a tag." And
oh yeah, oh my God.
Come on, does that happen?
Oh yes. Oh yeah, that happens all the time.
I guess I've never been a woman, so I haven't experienced it like that.
Oh yeah, that isn't.
So when I think
that's like not that outrageous. That scene. I
so
mean,
somebody really has the guts. They're wearing a leotard, and they see someone that I don't even know, why would you ever think to do that? It's not like you go to somebody and say, "Oh, you know what? I could get you a better car if your car."
But also, right now, there's the height of the whole wellness. The wellness, culture now has sort of taken on the whole language of the diet industry. But they're saying, "Oh no, it's not about losing weight. It's just for your wealth and health." Your wealth, your health and your wellness, and they would, and there's a whole group of a big lot of people who make their money by being fitness coaches and health coaches and wellness coaches, and they're competing for clients. I mean, I totally believe those people would come up. That is so believable. That is so. In fact, I think it's almost tame what they did on the show.
I was going to ask about if anything had been toned down, but one of the great things, though, is there's that scene with you and your husband where she comes in, A.D. Bryant, the character comes in, and she just happens to walk into the house, and you're on the floor watching TV and joking around with them. And it was a different side of Vera. And so it was a great scene. Well, not that anybody cares what I think, but it really softened the character.
You mean is that when we were on the bed smoking pot, or is that a different one?
I guess I haven't seen that.
Oh no, that was the first. I think that's one of.
No, I don't know. No, it was later in the series, maybe
it's towards the end.
And she just walked into the house, and you guys were watching TV or something, I think, and just joking around, having a good time, even though he's so ill and whatnot.
Right. Yeah.
And
no, I have a lot of affection for that couple. I think they're happy. I think they're like each other. And I think that's one thing A.D. wanted to do with the series, is that she didn't want my character to be just evil. People are complicated, and they can have good relationships, and they can be tough on their kids about certain things.
So what has the viewer reaction been? Do you First of all, do you have a filter? Like someone looks through your mail before you get it, or you get everything? Or probably you.
I don't even. Well, no, I don't even get anything like that. I mean, like.
So no, people don't send mail. I guess people don't send mail anymore.
No.
People used to talk about viewer mail and getting
Yeah.
mail and
Well,
fan letters
sometimes through my website, but I've
So-
kind of strategically kept a low profile even in that area. So I don't get anything. I do have people in LA recognize me from the show for sure. And usually they know me anyway, and they say, "Oh, and then we also saw you on Shrill." So I get that. I haven't gotten any negative comments though about it.
Oh, okay, interesting. Because
Yeah.
it's such a creative. The whole show is like I said, it's Shrill.
I'm sorry. I'm excited for you to see the second season.
Oh,
Yeah.
Because you're saying it gets worse. So.
Well, just it's more,
Not worse,
it's
but-
developing. I mean, any show you're on, you kind of hit your stride. I mean, it's, first of all, I don't know. I'm really just the actor on this show. So unlike Work in Progress where I know everything that's happening in that show, this show I really am just the actor. But it felt like the show was gelling. The show was coming into its own in the second season. Not that it wasn't in the first, but it really felt that way in the second season.
Well, the thing about Hulu and Showtime and Starz, there's no arbitrary time limit. Is that correct? I guess I haven't watched the episodes specifically to see how long they are, but
Yeah, well, everything's changing so much, but in general they're half an hour long.
okay. Do you? I guess I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but then do you have creative control completely, or has anything been deemed too inappropriate, or it's wide open?
First of all, I have zero creative control. I'm just the actor. When you're the actor, you go in, you do your thing, like this show, and you can do whatever you want with it. Like you can cut it down to whatever you want or put in whatever you want. And that's what they're doing. So no, I have no creative control. But I'm happy. I'm fine with that because they know what they're doing.
So on 3 series, do you ever get confused about who you are this week?
No, because they were all in a row. So first I did Shrill, then I went to Chicago and did Work in Progress, and then I went to Toronto to do American Gods.
And you must be pretty quick-witted to be able to memorize things.
No, I'm not. I have to say, because I took 10 years off pretty much for raising my daughter, and only like a year and a half ago came back into show business. And I was shocked at how much slower I was memorizing lines. In fact, just being here at this conference, what I'm going to do the rest of the night is just go over the show that I'm doing on Saturday because I haven't performed it since July. It's a 90-minute show, and it's like I'm reading the script like I've never read the script before.
Oh.
I really noticed that my mind isn't as quick at memorizing as it used to be.
All right. Well, I look forward to the show then. Well, let's talk about the one-woman shows,
Okay.
or did they one-person shows? They're one-woman shows because.
Whatever, either way.
So you mentioned that you're always writing in your head, or you're always
Yeah.
thinking of what. One of my questions is, I mean, those are pretty long shows to have memorized
I know.
in your head and to go off.
I know,
each
Letting
night.
Go of God was 2 hours and 15 minutes.
So what? I guess this is an odd question, but you workshop them a lot.
Uh-huh.
So what comes into your head and you say, well, this is a good kernel of an idea for a show.
Well, I usually think of things that are funny and I think they're important to say, or they're a journey I think it's important to go on with the audience. And then usually I just have 3x5 cards and I write ideas down on those. Yeah, just like that. And then I go on stage and I do it like a stand-up. I just have notes and I try things out and I find out what's funny, or I find things that doesn't work, or I find things that do work. And then I start to just really write it out. After I've done it probably 6 or 7 times on stage, I start to really write it out, like as a narrative, every word. And I try to think of how it should be while I'm continuing to workshop it. And then over many weeks or even years, it finally kind of comes together as a show.
How long does it take to write a show like that?
Well, the fastest one I ever did was Older and Wider, which is the last one I did, the one I'm doing here. And that took 6 months. But I was working on it constantly for 6 months. And now this new one I'm doing, I As Well, I still don't know if it's going to work, actually. I'm doing 12 workshop shows in LA between now and the end of the year, and it may not work. I might not be able to pull this one off, actually.
Oh. Then you find that out through the workshopping process?
Yeah. Because to me, it's almost like a collaboration. The audience is laughing or interested or responsive or not, and you can feel that or hear that. Either they're laughing or you feel they're interested. I mean, you're also pleasing yourself, but you're pleasing the audience. And sometimes it doesn't work. Like sometimes the audience isn't into what you have to say, or you don't have a unique enough point of view, or like I don't know. To me, this last one, the jury is really still out whether it's going to work or not. But I'm going to give it 12 more shows to see if I can make it work.
And these are 90 minutes to an hour and 20 minutes, about between 90 and...
Well, I say they're only $5 shows because it's me with 3x5 cards and a lot of stuff doesn't work. It's a workshop. So I bill it as a workshop. And I say it's somewhere between an hour to an hour and a half, but probably about an hour 15.
But when you get done with one of them, like Older and Wider, you said that
then,
was...
Yeah,
that
an
was
hour
90.
and a half. I don't want anything over an hour and a half.
And it's at that point, once it's a finished product and you wrote out the narrative, it's all scripted. And
Yeah.
But with the 3x5 cards, you may improvise sometime?
No, then I lock it. By then there's been months since I've had the 3x5 cards. Now I'm just out there remembering it. Like what I'll do here is I'll have a little outline like of 10 topics that go from one to the next. I'll just have one word that I'll probably put somewhere. But I don't really work from then I'm really performing it. But that takes a long time to get there.
So when you say you're really performing it, it's scripted, but it's not a memorized narrative, or it is?
No, it's memorized.
So okay, wow. So.
No, it's totally memorized. But then the job is to make it seem like you're just making it up in the moment.
Geez, I don't know if I should ask this question, but do you ever get off track? I mean, so I'm a musician, right?
Yeah.
And I could be playing, I'm a jazz musician, and it's different, I know, but sometimes I could be playing a tune and go, geez, I wonder if I turn the dryer off, and then I'm playing a different tune. So it's probably...
Yes, well, I've had hiccups on stage where I have had a thought, and then I'm coming back into it, and it's a little scary for a moment, because I'm not sure where I was. And there have been times where I skipped a whole chunk.
Well, that's why, yeah, have you ever skipped a thing?
Oh, yeah, I've totally done that. Totally. I probably will do that on Saturday. But you try not to do that. I mean, that's a mistake. And most of the time I do all of it. And it's pretty close wording-wise, but I work pretty hard on making it seem like I'm just talking to the audience and I'm not, like, getting into a cadence like it seems memorized.
It seems like a difficult thing to do.
It is and isn't. I mean, because I was working on the show this morning, so I got up at 6 this morning and ran the entire show. It took about an hour and a half, about the same amount of time it'll take to do the show. And, I'm inspired by other people, but, like, I see a lot of comedians, but I always have to remind myself, just go out there and really act like you're talking and give yourself the room to be thinking up the next sentence.
Wow.
But that's when the acting part comes in. Like, that's a whole other thing. That's when like, at this point, I'm like the actress. The writer in me is gone. They've left me the script. I have to do that script, and I have to make it seem like I'm making it up on the spot.
Monologist.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Kind of has an interesting ring to it.
Yes.
Sounds dirty in a way.
I know it.
All right, so let's talk about letting go of God. We are at PsyCon, and that's a big thing that brought you into this community, I guess,
yes.
is letting go of God and going from Catholicism to atheism, because it's a big deal. And there's an interesting quote I read, I think from your bio or from the PsyCon board, that letting go of God has become, and I'll quote, a source that became an inspiration for many non-believers.
Oh.
You didn't know that?
Yeah, no, I did know that. I guess I do know that. I don't know how many, but...
So it's you're leading people to apostasy.
Which is not
so how does
my
that
intention.
feel?
I mean, the show isn't
Well, it must resonate with people, though, for them to go, oh, wait a minute.
Actually, my biggest goal with the show was not to convince people, well, I can't be... Yeah, of course, I feel like I'm right. Like I thought a lot about it. I've looked into it, and I really think I'm right. I think there's no way to say for sure that there's a God, and I think it's a mistake to live your life as if there is one, for the most part, for most people, not everyone. But my big goal with that show was not to create atheists with it. It was to let people understand how someone could be an atheist.
Well, I don't mean to say it in a, I know I was kind of being a little flip there, but what I mean by that is it's actually, for me, the process was watching several things without realizing it, and finally something clicked in my head. And so it doesn't lead you to atheism in the sense that it's A through Z process, but I think it was like in 2005, Sam Harris had written the book The End of
The
Faith.
End of Faith, right.
And I saw his C-SPAN book club talk.
Oh, uh-huh.
And I don't know why, I was on the treadmill doing it, and all of a sudden, everything made sense to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so, my point is to that, he wasn't leading me there. I was like the third party. I was listening to someone else's conversation.
Right.
And going, wait a minute.
That's what happened. It was really Daniel Dennett for me. Even though it could have easily been Richard Dawkins or Michael Shermer at that moment, or Steven Pinker, because I got turned on to all of those people. I was reading all their books, still a believer, but like wanting to, I became really aware of what a lack of science education I had. It was really through Michael Shermer's book, How We Believe. That was truly the beginning for me. I was like, oh yeah, what's the psychology of belief? Like, what's all I didn't think it would take my faith away. I just thought it would make me more educated about my faith. And then he would reference these other writers. So I was always writing down these other writers and getting their books. And then they kind of all brought me, like there's this whole world of these people. And not just them, many others. And over a couple of years of pretty intense reading, and I am, I guess, a voracious reader. I do read a lot, and I love it. I drink it up. I just love learning, and I found it really interesting and also really challenging because I don't have a science education at all. I was mostly in Catholic schools and never really had any science. And so it was just like, oh my God, it was so exciting. But it was in Darwin's Dangerous Idea, in the middle of it, which is Daniel Dennett's book, that I went, oh, okay, yeah. I get it. I thought, just stop pretending you don't believe in God anymore.
It's interesting because once you have that moment, you can't go back. I didn't really reason. So for me it was, and read the end footnotes, because that's how I got involved with it. I read The End of Faith. I saw the book TV thing. I read The End of Faith, and every time there was a footnote, I flipped to the back and read it. And it would be, a footnote from another book. So then I would get that book, and I would read part of that.
That's kind of what I did.
And so I have this huge library, right?
Yeah.
And once that light bulb hits, I guess I'll call it a light bulb, and you think, well, I don't, it's just, what's going on here? It all makes sense.
Yeah. Well, for me,
and you can't go back.
I talk about it in my show that I put these not believing in God glasses on for a minute, and I try to look at the world without God in it and see, and I just tell myself, it's just going to last an hour. Just let yourself not believe in God for an hour. It's noon, at 1 o'clock you can go back to believing in God. Like, I gave myself that kind of permission because it was really scary to think I wouldn't believe in God. And it was really sad to me because I really felt like I had a close personal relationship with God. And to accept that was just me having a relationship with myself was really hard and pain and sad. And it was embarrassing and confusing. And, it was just a million things. So I would just let myself try to look at the world without God in it, put those glasses on, and look out and see if I could just make it be okay, and then it very quickly was okay. I mean, I would say after 3 or 4 days, I was like, yeah, and I can't go back. But what's interesting is I follow a lot of religious people because I'm just interested in it.
You follow them?
Like on Twitter or whatever. And a lot of them, and my specialty is Catholicism, so I kind of follow a lot of these they call them trad Catholics, these sort of more conservative Catholics. They all say that they were atheists at one point, but then they realized You know, like they have their own stories where they say they were an atheist because it's more, I think, because it's more dramatic, and that they came to the faith. Usually they were raised Catholic. They had a time when they weren't. To me, that's code for I was having sex with people and drinking or something. And then I got to this point where I was an atheist. I think atheist is code for licentiousness and, you know, debauchery or something. And then they see the way and they realize they really are Catholic. So they bring up atheism a lot. It's really interesting. Now, I think they're reverse engineering that atheism. I think they're Catholic, but they want to show you how they've, you know, they want to speak with authority about atheism. So they've made their muddled doubts about religion at a time where it didn't serve them very well, so that they, for whatever reason, for that particular person, and then they become very religious, and then they want to talk about it, and it makes it more profound, I guess, the story to say that you were an atheist but then became a Catholic. It's really interesting.
Well, the odd thing is Catholics drink and have sex too. That's not just so. So it's not code to be.
Yeah, first of all, you can drink all you want in Catholicism. There's no problem with that. But and you can have sex if you're married. So like, you know, like it's a whole thing. Like so. When I engage them, they'll all say, "Oh, you know, I was an atheist, but now I'm not." So I'm dealing with that a lot.
Wow.
And I was thinking, no, you weren't really an atheist. I don't think they really were. I think you thought you were after you were religious and you wanted to make it seem like a bigger conversion.
Well, letting go of God, we skipped to the I guess I'll call them scholarly commentaries, Dan Dennett, Richard Dawkins, Sanders. But I think if I remember the story correctly, it didn't start with the skeptical books. You started with adult Bible classes, so your doubts started reading so you read the Bible, and that started to sow seeds of doubt, which is a very interesting part of it, which kind of happened to me too, if you read the stories.
Yeah, I mean, if you read the Bible, I mean, I don't know how anybody reads the Bible and thinks it's the word of God. It's such a crappy word of God. I mean, if there was a God and they were going to inspire a book, I mean, don't you think it would be a better book than this? I mean, it's a jumble. It's such an obvious to anybody historical mishmash of stories that got all funneled into this book for various reasons at various times. I mean, like, I don't know how you can look at it not thinking of it that way. It's just obviously that's what it is. And so to me, when I took the Bible study class at the church, this is when I was Catholic.
And that was with a priest.
That was with a priest
who
leading
seemed
it.
Pretty,
you know.
Pretty, so you would, you know, was sympathetic to the fact that it's kind of a story, which is what's odd to me to hear from a priest. So I'm sorry, go on.
Well, that priest was particularly liberal, but first of all, what are they supposed to say? I mean, like, they have all of their ways of talking out of both sides of their mouth, you know, about it, like about the contradictions and everything else. Well, it was inspired by God. Well, but then people wrote it. Well, they may have not got everything right, or maybe it evolved, or, you know, they have a whole list of things that they come up with. To me, I got embarrassed about them. Even this priest who was saying, well, you know, maybe it's myth-ish, or maybe it's, you know, maybe it's true, maybe it's a story, maybe it resonates with us. Like, I felt like he was really doing a lot of philosophical gymnastics to try to stick with it being the inspired word of God. But, you know, Catholics have a pretty loosey-goosey. The thing that's different about Catholics, and this is something I admire about Catholics, is they're not like evangelicals who say this is absolutely, every word is true. The Catholics don't believe that. They think the Bible and the traditions of the church together are what God, you know, helped lead. So you're not really just looking at the Bible, you're also looking at the traditions of the church. Now that makes it hard to argue with a Catholic because they're going to be jumping all over the place, but it's more logical to believe that there was a certain traditions that also became part of the religion. So it isn't just the Bible. The Christians are all over the map too, but the evangelicals really do believe every word of the Bible is true. And they do backbends that I have to look away. I mean, it's so embarrassing to me what they say. I mean, I would find it really hard to be an evangelical. But anyway, the Catholics, it just, I guess what happened to me is I got turned on to the Bible because it was so interesting, and there were parts that were so beautiful, and there was parts that I wanted to stop and spend my life learning how this book got in there and that book got in there. But to say that it was a sacred literature that God inspired, how can you? I honestly do not get how anyone can say that.
Well, I guess I should have said I was raised Catholic too.
Oh.
So, but I didn't go to Catholic school like you did, and I was not a great Sunday school student.
Yeah. So you're more culturally Catholic in kind of a vague way. Like you didn't, I will say
I didn't go to Mass every day, we went and...
Most Catholics don't know any of this stuff. I mean...
Well, that's what when I started to look into it, I realized they weren't telling me the whole story, which is interesting because as a Catholic, or I guess it would be a Christian, all the stories that you're told that are good stories, they're actually, if you finish the story, they're not a good story. And one of my favorites is the Sodom and Gomorrah thing. We all know, no, we don't all know, but there's the part at the beginning where he says, oh, you can't rape the angels. Here, take my daughters, which that's kind of weird.
Weird, yeah.
And then they get out of the town, and Lot's wife looks back and is turned into a pillar of salt. And usually that's where the story ended for me.
Right.
And so the point of the story was don't disobey God because, I don't know exactly why, but she was bad, and this is what happened.
It's really superstition. Yeah, don't look back. They said don't look back, a bad thing will happen.
But that's not where it ends. So if you finish the story, they go off to, Lot goes off to the mountains with his 2 daughters. The city's the only life they know.
Right.
So they don't realize there's another world out there. They think, our dad is the only guy left in town, in the world.
Right, in the world.
We'll never have children.
Right.
Let's get him drunk and have sex with him so we can have babies.
I know it.
And then, and the end of the story is, so they did this, and they went off to this part of the land and are known as the Moabites, so don't associate with them.
Right.
And I'm thinking, what is the point of that? I don't quite understand now.
Okay.
It's not the feel-good story that you thought it was.
Oh my God, there's almost no feel-good stories.
So are they saying that if you think, so is it tacitly approved in the Bible that incest is good if you're drunk and you don't think there's anybody else around?
Well, it's if you're the chosen people and you think, there's if. I mean, the thing...
But we didn't learn that part in Sunday school. We stopped at the pillar of salt.
They really cherry pick everything. Because they have to. I mean, they're in a bind. These stories are of an ancient people who were trying to get by and had a god that they thought would help them in war, and there were certain rituals that they thought appealed to that god. I mean, and they had certain stories that they imported from Persia and Zoroastrianism. All those stories appear in other places. And, those stories helped these people feel like they were one people and that they were related to each other by this tradition. And it helped them survive. It helped them fight off other tribes, and it helped them believing these myths together. I can see the advantage of it, but it's not only is it not true, that's the obvious part. It's not even inspiring. It's not ethics. I was just talking to my daughter who's taking an ethics class. That's not ethics. It's really mythology. It's stories. It's legends of the old people. It isn't even trying to have a moral story. It'd be more interesting if it had some moral point.
I guess you're right. That's what I'm saying. What is the point of just, at the end of that story, don't associate with the Moabites? Okay, so what's the...
that part of it, now I'm just learning this myself because we talked about Robert Price. I'm such a big fan of his. Now he's becoming sort of a teacher for me. And we were just talking about this last week. Those stories, like the Lot story, they're more like the Greek stories of Mercury and Adonis and Hercules. Those stories, those kinds of stories where there's gods, and sometimes they mate with their daughters, and sometimes they kill this, and those stories really belong in that kind of milieu. And then it isn't until later, and now they're thinking that maybe it's because of Buddhism seeping in from, India, basically, coming towards the Middle East, that this sort of interiority with ethics, like I'm going to be a pious person. There's no like I'm going to be just a pious person. A pious person in most of the Old Testament is just do what this arbitrary God arbitrarily told you to do. I mean, it isn't about doing the right thing because that's the moral thing. It's like tribal, it's like old pagan, it's really kind of pagan. You know, like it's this idea of all these gods, except that they're making it one god, and you have to do this ritual, and the god likes that, and you have to show the god that you're supporting that god. But then Buddhism or ideas from Hinduism made it their way over, and those kind of came out in the New Testament. Like Jesus is very much a product of kind of Asian spirituality. He's the one who's kind of, and it's really with the Kabbalah too. The later part of Judaism is, so there is parts of the Old Testament that really do address this, but it became a different religion. And anyway.
No, it's
so fascinating.
But the point is, it is fascinating.
Yeah.
And
yes.
So you've become, I'm using the word amateur here, not in a
no, I'm totally amateur.
You're an amateur scholar. There's nothing
proud
wrong.
amateur scholar.
Amateur scholar. So you've done a lot of reading. I mean, what I mean by that is you didn't go get a PhD in it, but you're reading the same books and the people, so you don't need to do it. So
this is one good thing about being successful in my mind is that, like somebody like Robert Price, this is the only good thing about being a little bit famous and having a little money is that I can call someone like Robert Price and say, I want you to be my personal teacher of the Old Testament.
Yeah,
you know, like, and he'll take my call and agree to it.
He's got such a great, he's got a great voice and a great cadence when I hear him speak.
But you know, he's an interesting guy. He's a conservative. Like, he's politically conservative. We're really different on a lot of things. Like, he's pro-life. He's not pro-choice. Like,
So you're friends now?
Well, I mean, we talk for an hour a week. Yeah. Is that friends? I guess so. So he's a complicated guy himself. He's a really interesting guy himself. You know, like he has his own views.
I have seen I've heard him speak via YouTube, and I've read a couple of the books, and I've seen a couple of the debates on YouTube. And the interesting thing is when he makes a point, if he's talking, you know, his opponent, it's very annoying that the opponent will go, oh, well, you're a mythologizer, and that's been disproven. Like, you know, nobody does that anymore. And yeah, that's what he does. He goes, well, if we can't even talk, what are you talking about? He doesn't say it like that.
Right.
But what do you mean? You can't just say it's been disproven and that nobody believes in the mythology part of it anymore. And what I mean by that is that this is all based out of other mythologies.
Right. Oh my God, and it so is. I mean, like.
Well, it's interesting to see someone that supposedly has a PhD in philosophy and a PhD in this and a PhD in that say that this was a thought pattern back in the 50s, and so came along and decided that wasn't. You know what I mean? It's just.
Yeah. Well, I guess my question is, I don't know how anyone, and just think of all the Bible scholars there are right now in America who are studying right now. I don't know how anyone studies it at all without seeing the parallels of it between all kinds of other religions, all kinds of other stories. Like, it's just so obvious. You know, like, it's just so plainly there. So, like, the whole idea that, like the Greek and Roman gods, that's mythology. But then there was this point when something really happened. Like that whole idea. And yet the whole heroic myth-making stories, all those things, like the idea of being born of a virgin, dying and coming back to life, all of those things come from these stories. And to me, the most upsetting thing about this is that we humans seem to have come up with these stories that are meaningful to us and help us in various ways and that really appeal to our imagination in certain ways and kind of reflect the history that all humans have gone through. And they're so interesting psychologically. And when you study them as if they're real, you miss what's great about them. Oh. What's great about them is that these are psychologically interesting stories to us. I mean, these arouse us. These are in our hearts. These are things we dream about. And it's just like to ruin it, to saying it's true, that it actually happened, I think wrecks it. It almost allows you to not think of how profound it really is.
Interesting. I think when you were talking about the common mythologies, that was one of the things for me that when I was So I dropped Catholicism, but I was still a believer.
Right.
Because I didn't do the ritual, but there has to be a God. I believe Jesus.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. But then when I started to learn more, it became shocking to me when I was exposed to the other stories. So like I learned that almost every civilization has a flood myth.
Yes.
And I thought, wait a minute, that's my story.
Yeah, right,
though,
exactly.
Right? And then you find out, well...
Oh, no, that's all over the place.
Yeah, it's all over the place. And, the dying and the resurrection.
Right.
That's all over the place. I thought, wait, no, that's... That. And then also, I would say, well, wait a minute. When I was in 8th grade, you learned about gods coming down and having sex with humans.
Right.
They take on a human and have sex with someone. And I think, oh, that's a great story. And then I go, wait a minute.
Right.
That happened here. So it's exactly the same story.
And also, that even happens in the Bible. I mean, in the Old Testament, there's these...
Oh, okay.
There's these this tribe with super tall people, and the way they're explained in the Bible is that God had sex with the women of that tribe, and that's why the people were so tall. Well, and that just came from people like, why are those people so tall? Well, they must be gods.
The thing about Mary and God having sex is also, if you realize it, so God has sex with her while she's asleep?
Yeah, no.
Is that
okay? I'm working on a show right now where I call Yahweh like the Bronze Age Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, no.
I mean, think about it. He sends angels ahead to talk to her, to let her know a very important person is going to visit her. Oh. She should be really excited.
Wow. He had the front people, right?
Yeah, he has the front people. Yeah.
Wow. That's a great parallel. Good for you.
My husband helps me with it. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to try to get... It's shocking for some
Sounds
people.
almost litigious in a way.
Yeah, I know. But except that... Oh, there's so much there. I mean, this is such an interesting topic. Like, to me, when I talk to Robert Price on the phone, I wish I was 20 and I could go become a Bible scholar, because
me too, sometimes.
I really wish I had 40 years to just throw myself into this. I wish I could just suck all the knowledge of his head into my own, because how rich the world is to him to see so much in every reference to any mythological thing and know all the connections and where it came from and why this was here and why that was there. I mean, it's just such a lovely thing to study, I think.
When you had mentioned the Bible, well, let's go back to the education. How could anybody read this and not believe it?
Right.
Okay. I don't know how many negatives I used there. But what I mean is, so as I read it and learned more, I'm not sure how I learned this, but there were also translation errors, right? So Alma, the Hebrew gets translated to koine, but they didn't really read Hebrew that well, so when they translate it, they use a similar word. So Alma gets translated to Parthenos, but if you look up what Alma means, it just means a young woman.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean
a virgin. Yeah.
Right. So there's a translation error right there.
Right.
That could clear up a lot for us right there. So maybe Mary was just 16 and who knows what happened. So it's, in and of itself, right there, there's some evidence that the stories aren't working well. And so how do you get through seminary school? Because you have to study a lot. You have to learn the original, you have to learn Hebrew. You have to learn, I don't know if you have to learn
What about the
koine.
Torah scholars? What about the Orthodox Jews who just they have a whole class of people who are just memorizing the Torah. I mean, to me, that's just like a waste of a human mind. They're just memorizing stuff and regurgitating stuff back. They're not even thinking it through.
That's an interesting thing, because I assume that they probably were thinking. I can't imagine how you go through school, let's say the priesthood, because there's several years of there's history and the languages and all that. How you come out the other side as a believer. So I kind of just assumed that at some point they realized it's good for the masses. But
they realize it's good for them. I mean, they realize it's good for them too. I mean, I think they just think, well, maybe it is true and maybe it's not, but this is good for me and I think it's good for other people. I mean,
so I'm going to go out there and...
I think they're sincerely thinking it's a good thing. I don't think they're thinking, oh, this is a hoax. I can't wait to spend my life putting this hoax over on people. No, I think it takes a lot of energy to lie. I think it's easier to just believe it and just relax your standards a little.
Well, and as you were going through the process, you kind of let go of Catholicism first, right? And then you
Yes.
started looking for...
Well, then I felt like I needed something.
Okay, so that's an interesting point there.
Yeah.
And so you went to Buddhism.
I really only went to Buddhism, I have to say. I mean,
So the God is love, the nature thing
like
didn't
I
work
kept
out.
trying to redefine God.
So it was important. So keeping the God aspect was
well,
more
like
important than the
okay,
Catholicism.
I had a huge relationship with him. It's like, sunk cost economic theory.
Okay, so
you
were so into it you couldn't.
I had spent a huge amount of time praying, and I also felt saved by God on really many times, not in a superstitious way, like he saved me from getting hit by a car, but like I had gone through a lot of difficult times where praying got me through it. And I thought someone was listening, and I thought somebody was looking out for me. I mean, like, I really believed it. And I had spent years, my whole life, and I'd been inculcated with it by the time since I was young, really believing that, and it only had positive results. It only gave me that kind of calm zen of understanding. Like, so to have this idea of this person, of God, and to only have positive outcomes from it, and to give that up was really hard to do. And it took me, I kept thinking, well, I don't believe the Catholic God, but I do believe in just a God, and we don't know, and people don't really know, and maybe it's just love. And I wanted there to be a God. Of course I did. I had a relationship with God. I felt like I felt God's presence and grace. I felt like praying made me think straight and get through difficult things.
So psychologically, though, when you're praying, I mean, you are thinking it through in your own head. So
Exactly.
you're working it out, and you're talking to yourself, and you're coming up with a plan. Maybe you wake up the next morning and things are solved, but because you slept, I'm making up silly things here. But
no, that's not silly. That's completely real. The thing is, we're not just bipolar. We're multipolar. Like, we have all kinds of voices in our head. Like, we do go to sleep and solve the problem in the middle of the night and wake up and go, aha. We do suddenly see it from a different point of view. That's what creativity is. We have all kinds of different points of view that compete for precedence in our mind. I mean, the whole idea of the angel and devil on your shoulder, like, even as mundane as I'm going to have this next glass of wine and I know that I shouldn't, don't do it. Like, there's different voices in your head, and they all compete for supremacy. And why not give one of the best version of that to God? I mean, I think that's what most people do.
All right, now let me ask you the $1 million question.
Okay.
You adopted a daughter, all right, after you were an atheist, I assume.
Yes.
All right, so this is the question everybody gets. How do you teach right from wrong and morality if there is no supreme objective authority?
Well, actually, I found it very easy because actually religion mucks that up because it kind of screws with your natural sense of morality, I think. Because now you're saying, there's a God watching you, and this God has a certain set of rules, and these are the rules. Like, to me, with Mulan, my daughter, it was like, well, how do you think she feels if you come and take her doll? Well, that wouldn't be nice. Or what's best for everyone? Bring it back to that. Like, if everyone behaved in a selfish way, then that would be a pretty terrible world. Teaching that's the hallmark of our species, cooperation. To me, that's what you're teaching a kid, is how to cooperate and how to, like for example, I wouldn't say don't lie. I mean, it was never this obvious, but just as an example, don't lie because it's a sin. I would say don't lie because people will find out you lied. That's what's going to happen. And then you're going to be labeled a liar, and they won't trust you so much anymore. So the reason not to lie is to keep a good reputation amongst people that you want to trust them, and you want them to trust you. It makes you a trustworthy person. That's a very valuable person.
And it's actually a Jewish story too. The story about the rumor and the pillow and the top of the hill and all that.
No, I don't even know.
I don't know, maybe if it's not a Jewish thing, but there's, somebody spreads a rumor, and then later they go to apologize, and the person says, here, take this pillow to the top of the mountain, shake out all the feathers, and when you pick up all the feathers, then I'll forgive you. So, because as the rumor spreads, so don't lie.
Oh, I see.
So it's a story when you
that
could just say.
That.
So when you could just say what you just said.
Right.
You don't.
I think it
you
is.
don't need the store. I guess
I
it's
do
not
think
exactly parallel,
For
but
kids, I can see it's sort of like how Santa Claus works for kids in a very transactional, ham-fisted way. Of course, Santa Claus works, which is basically the starter god, right? I mean, like that's be good and you'll get a reward. Santa's watching you. You should always be good because then you're going to get this reward later at a later time. And that does work. I see that work. I never did that because I felt like I couldn't lie to her about like that. And it's hard. It's hard to teach a kid to be good when they don't want to be good and they don't see why they should be. So I can totally get why it's an efficient hack to come up with a guy like a god or a Santa Claus to make a kid stay in line.
a hack. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
But I don't see how an adult can hold on to that. I don't get that.
Well, you're parallel about it's just you're going to live in a society and we have to get along with each other,
Right.
and that's good enough for most people, and you have the outliers.
Right.
But
Or like I would point out, even in our social groups, like this is a person who always kind of tells a fibby story, and everybody knows it. And you know what? People don't like him that much for it because they don't know if they can totally trust what he's saying is true. They don't know if he's over-exaggerating. They don't know that you don't want to be that. That's a high cost. You might be more interesting, but people aren't going to trust you as well. So I try to teach it like that in terms of social interaction. I mean, I can't. In fact, just before I came here, I was talking to my daughter, and she's a computer science engineering degree student in college, and they have to take like 5 units of ethics. And I was like, wow, that's so good. I'm so glad that you're getting just basic ethics. And so she was kind of going through the classes trying to decide which one she was going to take. But I'm all for ethics.
hell yeah. You're just an atheist.
I'm just an atheist, yes.
All right, Julia Sweeney, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. It was
I hope
fun.
you had a good time.
I did have a good time.
Oh, good.
It was really
Thank
good.
you. 502 Conversations. I'm Brian Kirby. My guest today has been Julia Sweeney. Would you like to I looked up your website, and I've been reading your blog.
Oh, yeah.
So it's very personal, by the way. So do you want to give out any blog spot?
I have juliasweeney.com. I've been doing a monthly blog. And actually, this month's is really personal. I was just working on it yesterday, but not like embarrassingly personal. And I have a weird thing about fame. Like, I don't want more than 10,000 Twitter followers. I don't want more than a certain number of people reading my blog. It's embarrassing. Like, if I think that a couple thousand people read my blog, good. Like, I'm not trying to get people to read it, but there is something in me that wants me to put it out there, so I do.
Well, being shy, you're in no threat in this room of becoming too famous.
I think I'm going to be okay about not becoming too famous.
So if you're worried that 502 Conversations is going to hit the air and boom, you're going to have a million followers, I don't think you have to worry about that. So thank you once again.
All right, thank you.
I very much appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I enjoyed it too.